But first, I want to invite Holly up here to do a quick introduction about the League of Women Voters, our esteemed partner. And I will just introduce myself as Kathy Saunders, the director of Lippitt House Museum. So, Holly.
Okay, I'm Holly Courage. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Rhode Island. And probably now most people think of the League of Women Voters as just voting and civics and that kind of thing. But what you have to understand about the League is that the National American Women's Suffrage Association, most of the members did not start as people that were just fighting for the right to vote. Maybe some of them wanted it because they knew that women weren't allowed to own their own, have any property. They were treated very badly once they got married, as far as the law went. But you have to realize the women's sphere. Women were allowed to care about schools, slavery, religion, temperance, you name the issue. Women were involved. And after a while, women realized, hey, there's only so far we get unless we have a vote so that we can influence laws. So that's when they all got together and started working on suffrage, because they realized their causes only went so far before they ran into, no, we can't get any laws passed until we get the right to vote. So that's where the League of Women Voters comes from. So,
Thank you. If you move that way, great. You won't get tangled up. And likewise, you might be wondering, why are we doing a program like this at Lippitt House Museum? And that's because the Lippitt family had a long history of public service, and I thought one particular story would be relevant to tonight's conversation, and that is one of May Lippitt Stedman. She grew up in this house, and in 1916, she was a volunteer with the Providence Public Service League, which sent supplies, things like socks, surgical dressings, garments for refugees to the Allied troops in Europe. And then in 1917, she was a founding member and secretary of the Providence chapter of the American Red Cross, which during World War I, she then was involved with and headed the knitting and garment workshops, the canteen, and the motor corps. Now, tonight we have 4 community leaders who have unique perspectives on the intersection of charity and mutual aid, which I think extends beyond that original work. And I am going to turn the program now over to tonight's facilitator, to the esteemed Rochelle Lee, who, if you do not know, wears many hats in our community, including being a member of the League of Women Voters and serving as president of Southside Community Land Trust. We have put bios on your seats and information about the organizations so that we can give most of the time for the conversation.
Greetings. Is this one?
mm-hmm.
Testing. No late. Anyway, my name is Rochelle. I want to welcome everyone. I want to thank our hosts as well, and League of Women Voters for coordinating and putting this particular event on. I will, because we are short of time, I won't really spend a whole lot of time speaking on my own behalf, but I want to make sure that I do a quick introduction. Tom is with the Mathewson Street Church, which is right downtown Providence. Tarshire is both Providence and Pawtucket, Rooster and Pollard. Chandelle is a small businesswoman as well as a advocate around agriculture. Trained a lot of our kids, I should say, and just amazing people doing amazing work. So with no further ado, I'm going to ask everyone to just take a few minutes, introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what their work is and how they got here.
Hi everyone, so nice to be here tonight. My name is Kevin Simon. I am the Director and Lay Supply at Mathewson Street United Methodist Church. Lay Supply is a term that the Methodists use for interim pastor, so I'm also serving in the role as pastor at Mathewson Street. Our church has been an open door to community members for decades. Most of the work that happens at our church is navigating folks who are in varying states of crisis. Most of the folks that come through our doors on a daily basis spent the night outside the night before. They're coming from congregate shelters. A lot of folks are navigating some physical and mental obstacles in their journeys. And some folks are in states of addiction and recovery. So we try to open our doors to provide a safe space for people to come in to continue to take positive steps forward on their journeys each and every day. Last year we served over 50,000 meals at our church. So we're open 6 days a week. We do breakfast and lunch each day for community members. We do all sorts of documentation work with folks each day, from state IDs, bus passes, birth certificates, all the things that are needed to get back on track. We work with a lot of the service providers across the state, so if it's not something we can navigate, we try to get people connected with different services all around. So yeah, we do everything we can to open our doors to just give people a place to come to get their lives back on track, and that's who the church has been for a long time, and we'll continue to do that work for years to come, hopefully.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tarshire, and I used to refer a lot of clients to him when I was a mental health discharge planner at the Department of Corrections, and that led me to start my own organization when I left there, which is to help individuals reintegrate. That was the thought, at least. It has since expanded to working with youth at a high school, providing a lot of environmental justice work, food justice work, a lot of intersections of work that I do, connecting communities. So both adults and youth, and so that's basically what. And I do global work, so I also work in Africa. So I'll put that out there. I do. I help start up organizations that combat environmental justice in both Ghana as well as Liberia.
Hello, everyone. Is my mic working?
I don't think.
Oh, she in the back told me yes. My name's Chandelle Wilson. I am a lifelong Providence resident. I was born here, raised here. I currently, my full-time job is at Southside Community Land Trust. I'm their education programs manager. I run youth education programs around environmental justice, sustainability, and regenerative agriculture. I am a community herbalist in my free time. I am a mother of 3 in my free time. Also, I am, I have family members in the audience, but also in my free time, I am one quarter of a worker-owned herbal cooperative that is working to bring herbal care, herbal medicine, herbal knowledge to frontline communities in Providence. We're in the community building phase right now and fundraising stage of our venture, and are looking to open up an herb shop and tea bar in Providence early next year. But I've grown up in Providence. I've been a grassroots community organizer my whole life, starting off with my preteens with Youth in Action, and currently just going up, working with AS220 and other organizations around the city. I'm currently the chair of the city's Sustainability Commission for that department. And so really my goal is to, whatever I can do to make community a better place for all of its inhabitants, I want to focus there.
Thank you, guys. I did too. Wow. Anyways, we have a few somewhat pre-prepared questions. We may not be able to get to all 5 or 6 of them, but I want to start with a question for everyone. As you know, the title of this particular forum or this program is Organizing for Mutual Aid, and it'd be helpful and it'd be interesting to hear from you guys what you define as mutual aid, and how is it different from various forms of assistance, whether it's charity or programs for those in need. And can you give us a few examples of how you distinguish between mutual aid and charity?
You know, mutual aid to me in our community is groups, community members coming together, pooling resources, time, and talent to meet a specific need in all of our communities. For us, that looks very different. We do a lot of one-on-one kind of individual assistance with folks, connecting them with resources. But we do a lot of community efforts too, where we have large numbers of folks organizing for different causes, and that looks very different. We see a lot of power sparked from those kind of mutual aid efforts that have occurred at our church over the past couple of years. And I can provide a couple examples recently of what that's looked like, and I'm going to single out a few people who are sitting here because they've been very involved in those organizing efforts. This past year, we organized an effort which was called Operation Nod, and it was a shelter initiative that we tried to organize churches to be able to open their doors to friends in the community who didn't have a place to go in the very, very cold nights. Sarah, who's sitting here, was very instrumental in being a part of that. So what we saw was, you know, it started with a conversation of 4 people, and we threw this idea against the wall, and it turned into a community meeting of about 150 people who started to organize to have this initiative come to fruition. And outside of what happened from that was not only did we meet the need to open successful shelters at 3 churches, but there were kind of these subgroups that started to form as offshoots of this initial initiative, and tackling some of the other obstacles that are, you know, put in front of so many of our community members, whether it was organizing around housing issues or, you know, police harassment or some things that happened to a lot of our friends in our community. So it really, those sorts of community efforts really sparked some tremendous power, not just for the cause that we initially started. So that was, yeah, really an eye-opener. And then we have Anissa and Jen who are sitting in the middle there. And when COVID hit, we were real fearful about how our friends would have access to resources because our doors were closed. A lot of our ministry is navigating folks for food, providing food for the food insecure. So we started to think of ways that we could meet people where they were at out in the community. So Jen and Anissa were 2 critical volunteer members who came in every single Saturday during the entire COVID and provided over 250 lunches out into the community every single week. And that effort's continued to this very day. So yeah, that's kind of what our community looks like in terms of organizing mutual aid versus kind of an individual need basis.
I echo that sentiment. I would say that for me, it's something that also empowers people. I'm all about empowerment in terms of, okay, we give something, but how are we then going to help uplift people afterwards? And so I find myself, when I'm doing any community work, whether it's mutual aid, there are people that I've helped start businesses and stuff like that, that have lived experience. To me, that's a form of mutual aid. Being able to actually uplift people to meet their full potential. I also think that there's a difference, I think, between what I call toxic charity, where people have, they're giving, but not for the right reasons, a savior complex. And so I think that when you're giving, it has to come from the heart, but it also has to empower the people that, you know, in some form or fashion. And it doesn't always have to be monetary. A lot of people think that it has to be monetary, but it doesn't. It could be something like giving time, giving talent, like Rich said, and that's basically, I think, yeah, we're doing similar work. I mean, before COVID, I helped a formerly homeless person start her own organization to address the homelessness situation in Providence. We were doing a lot of, during a blizzard as well, transporting our own cars. So, you know, it's also not being afraid to do certain things, and not letting fear stop you from helping. So that's, to me, is a form of mutual aid, or how I think of mutual aid.
Sorry. When I think of mutual aid, I think of 2 things. Primarily, mutual aid has 0 barrier to entry, right? And I'll contrast that with something like charity or like, let's say, a food pantry. A food pantry is a good place to start, right? Because we have a lot of them in our cities. But most of them require qualifying information. You have to qualify, you have to live in a certain place, you have to make a certain amount of money, or there are restrictions on who or how you can receive goods, right? That, to me, is a clear-cut example of charity, right? With those qualifiers to entry. Mutual aid, there's no qualifier to entry, right? Your qualifier to come and eat is that you're hungry. So that's one thing that I think about when I think of mutual aid versus other kinds of aid, is that the barrier to entry or the barrier to access. The other thing that I think about is, why is it flying out of my head? I'll just pull another one out, but Tarshire started to touch upon this, but building a sense of resilience or education. Aid should always come with education. And it's not, you're doing this wrong, this is how you should be doing it. It's, here are some other options maybe, right? Not, this is where you go to get the things that you need. I don't know what you need, but here are some places that you can go to get some things that you might need. And so that was it. It was the difference between mutual aid and charity is around that mindset. It's that, how are we entering this relationship with someone or a group of people, right? And how is it benefiting us and them? That's that mutual part, right? And I like to think that, like, people with the savior complex, sometimes that's mutual aid too. If you're just gonna go out and give people stuff so you feel better about yourself, you get the benefit of feeling better about yourself, and people get the benefit of your resources, right? Like, that's also mutual aid. Mutual aid is a two-way street. It's a relationship, and it requires conversation.
Thank you. Good answers, huh? I'm gonna jump around a little bit, and only because I want to try to make sure we get a chance to answer questions toward the end. But there is one question that I find rather intriguing, which is to help our audience understand the type of work that you do and the challenges you may face. How do you balance individual needs with the efficacy and efficiency of a standard delivery of care? We seem to have managed to corral our homeless, unsheltered population in these various paradigms of standards of care, be on the list, get off the list. You're on one list but not another list. How do you guys navigate that? And also, does the aid that you guys are providing, does it ever present a sense of compromise?
You want to start?
I mean, I'm sorry, I can start it.
You have a lot of questions in that.
I'll take one of that. You pick one of the other.
Oh my goodness. So the first one was, because I was listening to the second one, but I would say that the work that I'm doing now, I couldn't do when I was in the prison. I had to come outside because there's so many limitations to working in certain organizations. You're put into, like, even in the nonprofit world, even though we're doing good work, depending on how big you are, if you're a small grassroots, you have a little bit more flexibility, which is what I like, which is what I am. But if you're a larger organization, you're bound by certain rules, certain criteria. You got things to meet. Not to say that I don't, but it's on a different level when you're a larger organization, and you don't have that flexibility to do what you want to do in terms of helping the people you want to help. And so I kind of like that flexibility that allows me to do that. Not to say that bigger organizations are not doing the work. It's just that they have a lot more criteria, and I have a lot more flexibility as a small org. And the second question.
So, at some point in the process that you described, do you feel like there's a dichotomy between the care you're providing and feeling like you're compromising?
Like, I think that because of the way I operate as a small organization, I don't think that I compromise. Because I'm not, it's like I do my work, I do it in a certain way, I'm not bound by certain things that other organizations are because they're larger and they have to follow certain things. So it allows me that flexibility to not having to compromise so much in the work that I do and to make my, kind of my own rules.
So I would add that, so as a member of the Gentle Strength Herbal Co-op, right, we're not outwardly facing yet, right, but as a staff member and service provider for Southside Community Land Trust, oftentimes aid is compromised. It's not always, but sometimes you can't give someone what they need or what they want or what they think they need. You don't have the resources to do so. You don't have the ability, right, the physical ability, or even it's maybe what they want, but not what they need. And so how do you find that balance, right, to provide what you're comfortable providing without subtracting from what they think they need. And so sometimes like mutual aid is walking that fine line with community members, right? And it's like, you know, a good hot topic issue is harm reduction around substance use. And it's like, do you provide clean, sterile supplies for people, right? Or is that enabling? And I'm not here to make a decision on either way. I think it's a very personal choice. But that's an example of compromise that you come to when you're dealing in community and you're working with people.
Yeah, a very interesting question, and in no way ever diminishing the power of mutual aid and what can come from that. But, you know, I struggle looking at it from a different angle with sometimes doing the work and trying to help folks who are in these states of crisis versus looking at it from other municipalities or state leaders that should be doing this work to begin with. I've really wrestled with that a lot of times, in our groups that organize at the church wrestle with that very question. It's like, there seems to be zero urgency right now in our state from leaders that should be addressing these critical issues. That just doesn't seem to be placing any emphasis on the issues that matter most, and that's making sure our Rhode Islanders are taken care of. Every one of our friends, every one of our neighbors has the access to just the basic human needs: food, shelter, clothing. And so I feel sometimes I wrestle with that in my work. Like, we're doing the work, but oftentimes it can feel like a temporary Band-Aid, that there's no long-term vision coming from municipal leaders and state leaders to think of how do we really address this issue instead of how do we continue to just push it under the rug and we'll let somebody else figure it out. So that's something that we struggle with in our community pretty constantly.
Just to tag on a little bit for all three of you, can you talk about how partnerships and collaboration help kind of enable the work you do, or certainly, is there in a linear manner to complement the work you do? But I think we all kind of struggle with partnerships because, we may see them differently. Each member of the partnership may see themselves in the partnership differently. So how do you guys navigate that?
I will say, collaboration and partnerships are so critical in the work that we do at our church and in our community. Without the relationships that we have, we certainly wouldn't be able to have so many of our folks take positive steps forward. And I like to use kind of we're all pieces of the puzzle when we talk about, the work that we do and the people that we work with. There's so much duplication of services that happens, which really can be difficult for our friends to navigate. So we believe 100% in working with so many different service providers across the state. So, we don't specialize in housing, but we work with House of Hope or Amos House or other organizations that specialize in those things. So we're connecting with services and we're getting to the places that we know will be able to help them navigate that. We know what our strong suits are and what we can help with, and if we can't, then we get people connected with the other services that can. So just absolutely imperative in our work in our field that we're making these collaborations happen to be able to help our friends in the community.
Yep, I would second that sentiment. Just in the work that I do at Southside Community Land Trust, we partner and collaborate with so many other organizations. So many of the people that we serve in our community gardens, in our rural farms, our incubator farms, are immigrants and refugees, right? And they have a whole host of things that they come with, and they come from different countries and different cultures, different traditions. And so we partner with organizations like Dorcas International, like Women's Refugee Center, the Refugee Dream Center, Women's Refugee Care, Refugee Dream Center, and other organizations like that, so that we can work with them across providers to build trust with community members. Because you can't help people if they don't trust you. Right? They're not gonna ask you for a God-forsaken thing if they don't trust you and they don't trust that you're gonna hold their situation with sensitivity. And so, you know, I only speak English. A lot of the constituents that I work with speak many different languages. So I'm working with other organizations and partners to provide those wraparound supports, right?
I would say that definitely not working in silos, and that's what I hear all the time in these Rhode Island streets, not to work in silos, because that we're all working together, and that includes larger organizations as well as smaller organizations. I find myself collaborating a lot, and it's strange, with local government. I don't know why, but yeah, so like local governments, I would say other organizations like Southside, where I do a lot of my my workshops at, and then I'm gravitating around towards Newport, which is like an untapped area where a lot of people don't know there's a low-income community there. I don't know if anybody knows that, but yeah, it's like they're hiding behind the mansions. I don't know, they're there. And so that is the area that I'm now focused on. There's a large Latinx community there, and so my target area is now Newport. Because we're always focusing so much on Pawtucket, Central Falls, and Providence, but there's other places that need that support. So I'm trying to build up my network of organizations that I'm tapping into, like in Woonsocket and Newport. So definitely we cannot work in silos, and I think the sooner we figure that out, the better we would be as a country, because right now we're divided. So yeah.
Thank you. We probably will be going a little bit quicker, but we only have 15 minutes before we start doing a question and answer. But I wanted to just sort of bring up more personal perspective from you guys as workers in this community. How do you navigate the sense that people mistake kindness in general, and how important kindness, you just talked about it, respect and for the folks you work with, but how do you guys manage to take care of yourselves and at the same time inspire and encourage others?
Well, first, I have to say I'm very blessed. I have a very supportive family network, and so when I am in need, I lean on my network. I also go to therapy and take medication. That's prescribed by a doctor. That helps sometimes. You know, and then it's finding community, just finding like-minded people who just, that you can commiserate with. You know, like when I was in school, we started a Stitch and Bitch club because it was like a bunch of girls would get together and crochet and just complain about the things that we needed to complain about. And like those, yeah, I see you back there knitting. You know, those kinds of communities, like you find your community of care And it could be family, it could be friends, it could just be people, like-minded people. I also garden, right? A lot of my day job requires me to be outside with my hands in the dirt with teenagers, and like that's a happy place for me. So I get to spend a good portion of my day creating life and teaching others to create life, and like I take a lot of joy in that.
So I'm weird. Therapy and definitely medications. I would say that's definitely
If it's for
top.
you, it's
Yeah, it's for you. I would say I'm an artist, so I'm a mixed media artist, and I find joy in just immersing myself in art. But I'm a researcher, and that may not seem like, oh my God, that's so good, that's relaxing. Trust me, if I go down a rabbit hole, I will keep going down that rabbit hole. So I'm a researcher at heart. When I find out a word or I find out a new person that I never knew about, I will research the heck out of that, and to me that gives me joy. So, like I said, I'm weird.
I'm echoing some of these words. Feel incredibly blessed on this journey. I say it all the time. I don't go to work. I go and I get to be with my friends all day long, every single day. And some of the most meaningful and lifelong relationships I've formed from being at Mathewson Street. So, fortunately, I don't really need other outlets to feel like I need to do self-care, because it's self-care all day long. I'm learning from people's experiences and sharing my own journeys with people and really forming connections that I just could never have imagined. If you were to ask me before I got to Mathewson Street 12 years ago, I would have said I would never envision something like this occurring. But yeah, I wake up every day and just, have a positive outlook and trying to, amidst all the difficulties that so many of our friends are facing, I feel lucky to walk into our building and be able to share just every single minute with people that I truly care about. And I know the feeling's mutual. We just are blessed to have a really magical community. But I was a musician in a former life, so I do play music. We had a nice fundraiser the other night where Anissa and Jen's band played, and yeah, a couple of my friends got up there and we played a few songs too. So yeah, music is really my only other form of self-care, but yeah, just feel incredibly blessed to be at Mathewson Street and to have the relationships that I have.
I want to add, because you mentioned
Please do.
kindness in your question, and I don't think of it as kindness, but I live to share. You know what I mean? Whether it's herbal knowledge, whether it's medicine that I'm making from plants, whether it is a new fun fact that I picked up last week, Like last year I went to Denver for the first time and I realized, shoot, I live in a house that's older than the city of Denver. I told everybody I met in Denver. My house is older than this thing. So like for me, sharing is a kindness. And that's how I give. It's just information and sharing. And if I can help somebody in that sharing, that's how I combat the blues.
Yeah, share a little bit on that too. Being a person of faith, I go to the scripture that says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. It's a very simple rule to live by, and the most simplest gesture, saying hi to someone or just smiling at someone, can change the entire trajectory of someone's day. I think in today's world, we often lose sight of that when just something so basic as those things, a conversation with someone who just looks like they might be down on their luck, can entirely shift the way that person's day ends up going. So always try to remind people in our community the importance of that, and just simple gestures can go a long way.
You want to add? Oh, I think you want to add. All right, we're on this ride down to Landon. Two quick questions. They're sort of interrelated in any way you want to tackle it. Tell us a little bit about your point of view on the ecosystem for mutual aid here in Rhode Island, and what would be your recommendations or advice or wisdom to help us help you do the work you guys do? How is it that the general public can contribute?
So I would say that sort of for the most part, at least the ecosystem that I am accustomed to, there are a lot of small grassroots organizations. They are on the ground. They don't have office. There, I don't have an office. I'm literally in my living room right now, and that's where I work. And if I do community work, I'm going to a place to do it. I'm going to a church to do a meeting. I'm going to a library, so I don't technically have an office. And so I would say any support you can give to smaller organizations. The bigger organizations kind of, they do need help, but they kind of have a bigger budget. I would say contribute to smaller grassroots organizations, whether it's food justice organizations or environmental justice organizations. They are the ones that are in need. They are the ones that are on the ground doing the work in the community with little to no resources. And federal funding we already know, but some of them didn't even have federal funding, and if they did, it was taken away because they are environmental justice work, because they don't think that climate's around. So I would say keep that in mind.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll start by saying so many of the systems in our state and across our country are just so fractured and broken right now. But in terms of access to resources in our state, I will say Rhode Island, in our community and the things that affect our folks, there are a tremendous amount of resources for our friends who are in need. Again, there needs to be ways to fix some of the systems that are in place to make them more beneficial and more positive, but there are we see a lot of people coming from other states coming to Rhode Island because they know that there are, tons of places, meal sites that they can have access to. There are access to other resources that just aren't available in some of the other states. So yeah, I will say that there are an abundance of resources, but there are a tremendous amount of things that need to be fixed with the broken systems. And the second part of the question.
What can
Yeah.
do?
Volunteering, finding an organization that's working for a positive cause. That's obviously a way people can get involved. For us, it's, calling the State House, going to testify at the State House for causes that are affecting our people. Those sorts of advocacy efforts are so important because, so many in our community often don't have a voice. So it's up to other community members to go out there and be the voice that our people need. So yeah, getting to those sorts of events, going to protest rallies, being a presence at these things, the cliched strength in numbers, like we just need more presence at a lot of these things. So those are just very basic, simple ways that we can get involved and try to create and move the needle in the right direction.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that, what was said between both of you. I would add that, it's fine, I think I'll hold both of them. There's a lot of grassroots organizations doing a lot of amazing work in our state. And our state and local municipalities are doing very little to support those efforts. Right? And we don't need to talk about the federal government. We know how that's going. Do we even have a parks department anymore? I don't know, right? So there's that. So I would say one way that the community can help is to do your homework before you cast your vote, right? Let's see who we are actually putting into positions of power. Who are we charging to make these decisions for our community? And do they have our community in mind, right? Yeah. People fought for us to have the chance to vote, and we should use that every opportunity. We should use it wisely. That's one way. Another way that I think community can really help out is to help shift mindset. We all have family members who think a certain way. We might even think a certain way when we see someone who lives a certain lifestyle, right? And everyone's entitled to their thoughts. I'm not here to police your thoughts. But if we can shift our mindset from what we think, from the way we think things should be, to questioning how can I make this better than what it is, right? We can't make everything the way we want it to be because it would be a world just for you. But how can I make this better for community is a different question, right? So I often, and I challenge myself to shift my mindset often. I grew up around a lot of different people, and I see somebody dressed a certain way, and my knee-jerk reaction is to have this judgment, right? And then my second reaction is to be like, hold on, sis, who are you? Who are you to say what about who, right? And it's like, stop, reassess, and then redirect.
Just wanna, can I add a few?
Oh, please.
Just because
Definitely.
the words that you said are so important, and it's that shifting of the narrative. So we can't be afraid anymore to be in conversation about the change that we wanna see. We have, myself, I grew up in a bubble. It wasn't until I got to college to be able to have my eyes open to see what's happening in our world. And I think we have to get out of the mindset of being afraid to have conversations about these difficult topics, and it's up to us to educate people who may not know what's happening in all of our communities. So such important words we have to be mindful of being able to have conversations that will shift the narrative that's occurring right now.
No, I think they must
I'm about to get the card, am I? 5 minutes. I think my last question, and then we'll open it to the audience, is kind of touched on it, but it wasn't particularly organized and focused. But tell me, in your work, what do you think? How will we recognize when we come to a place where we solve some of these problems? Well, not problems, but change things in general for people's lives. What does it look like for you in your work?
I think that, at least for me, it would be where we don't see these protests that are needed and all these things that are needed so much for the people that we serve, where things are in place, where we're not fighting for housing, we're not having these constant fights for clean water, we're not having these, it's like a battle that that's constant. That's probably why we're all drained. But when we're not having all of these things and trying to have people listen to why it's important that these changes need to happen, why people need housing, or why people need clean water and stuff like that, as an example. But I think that when you see less people on the street, less homelessness, that would be an indicator. When we have fresh drinking water, that would be an indicator. But that could be idealistic, but I'm saying these are some things that we could see that there's an outward difference, because right now it's like we're fighting for those differences.
I'm a big dreamer, and for our community and for our world, it would be those 3 basic things that I mentioned before, that everybody across our world has access to food, shelter, and clothing. They're basic human needs that every single person walking our earth deserves. And until that moment comes, I feel like the work is going to continue on, and we need to continue to educate, to advocate, to continue to fight for the things that we know are right. But those are the basic things and the services that are provided when people get into new homes, whether it's wraparound services for mental health or physical disabilities, all these things that coincide with it. So for me, that's a big dream, but I think it's just a basic human right that everybody deserves.
Yeah, I don't know what I would add to that, except for just a better environment, better climate, less climate change, less global warming, less pollution. No, but really it is just about, if mutual aid were no longer needed, it would be because people had what they need, right? And so it's as simple as that.
Anyways, here's the best part of this evening, question and answers.
Roving with the mic.
Right here. Yeah, I was just unraveling the microphone.
I don't know if it'll go that far, but.
Oh, me? Okay. I'm very impressed with what all of you are doing and your efforts I think that grassroots is something I've never really truly understood, but so necessary as you've described it, being, I hate this expression, but boots on the ground, and the intimacy and the relationships that you have with people that wouldn't otherwise have any help. And I think that there are sort of two or three levels of stuff that goes on, and connecting the dots between those is critical. So what I think is, and you touched on this, but my first question that I was writing down was, are you connecting the dots to the State House? I am a former New Yorker, and in the 4 years, going on 4 years that I've been in Providence, I've been at the State House 5 times for 3 or 4 different issues, but every time I go there, I end up being there for 2 or 3 different issues in that visit alone. I'll bump into my gun violence friend, or I'll bump into my funding for the arts friend, and I'm there for primary care. I've been volunteering, and I had to withdraw for personal reasons, tutoring in the Providence public school system. And I'll just say this, it's very clear to me that the problem there is segregation, and that the segregation occurred, like I'm told, some 20 years back. And I understand support for charter schools and private schools, but you have no right to not have competitive public schools. And I feel as bad for the students as I do for the teachers who've committed their lives to this. It's just a mess. Don't let me get on any of my various soapboxes.
That's okay, I stand right there with you.
So my question, I guess the thing that could be articulated as a question is, for all the grassroots, fractured, small things that have to happen because you can only function and do what you do the way you do it, is there some way that you can collaborate and roll that up to ensure that people like me are aware every time there's an issue to lobby, and if it fits my very busy retiree schedule, if I can get to the State House, I will do it. And because, as you started out saying, without the vote to change the laws, you have laws that either go ignored, or you have back office deals that are made with corporations and big finance that undercut your efforts for, things like housing. And I have a very kind council person who turns out he's not even mine. I'm across the street from where his district is on a human-face basis, and so I'm keeping him. Can't help it. But and I hear him as a good person, but he is a politician. So he talks in a certain way that doesn't offend and does offend, or doesn't offend and inspires. But I'm not sure that gets the dial moved. So again, my question would be, how do you coordinate with a State House effort to ensure that people are voting in an educated manner? Take this. I could go on all night.
Yeah, we could get into an epically long conversation about that. Yeah, I mean, it's such an important, I have strong feelings, and I'm not going to go on a long tangent about it, but, I feel until we have some different leadership and some positions across our state, we're not going to see the needle moving in the right direction. But that doesn't mean we still can't. We have to be out there advocating. For us, the church is very big on fighting for social justice issues, so we have organizing groups that meet every week. That's the way we get community members connected with bills we're fighting for at the State House. It's every Wednesday at 12 o'clock. It's the Rhode Island Homeless Advocacy Project. So that's how we educate our folks about what's happening that's affecting our community, and then in turn we let people know when we're going to the State House to fight for various bills that are affecting our community.
Yeah, I would say I'm a part of a lot of coalitions, like ECRI. They have every year they'll come up with their top priorities for environmental justice and conservation efforts, and as a collective we'll decide on which one we're supporting or which one we're not going to support because it didn't have enough meat in it. And so ECRI is one. I would say RIA is another one that's focused on education. Oh, that environmental. Oh, Council for
Rhode Island.
Yeah, I'm just going.
That's ECRI.
Yeah, and then RIA, Rhode Island Education Association.
Rhode Island Environmental Education Association.
Okay, thank you. I'm just strictly.
Alphabet soup.
So RIA, similar, they'll come out with a list of priorities in terms of environmental education or education in general for our students across the state. And they'll prioritize which one they're going to support as an organization, and then all of us are in the know. And so when we are writing letters or when we're making those phone calls, we'll know as a collective what bills we're going to support and which legislators are going to support. Because not all legislators are made equal either. Like there's some that I just realized that I was in a meeting where there's some that are supporting organizations that are polluting the environment.
Correct.
Corporations. I'm like, what? That person? That organ? I had no clue. So just FYI, research is what Chandelle said is very important.
I would, to answer your question, yes. I mean, there are ways that we collaborate with other partner organizations and other stakeholders like Tarshire and Kevin were saying. It's hard to get notice out to everyone to show up. It's kind of like if you know, you know. If you know where to look, you know where to look, right? But I know at Southside Community Land Trust, we do a lot of pushing around health, food sovereignty, health outcomes, land access, and food access. And so a lot of our lobbying at the State House is around those issues. And right now, coming up is the Small and Urban Farm Land Act, where we're trying to get small and urban farms, because we have many in our state, to get some tax exemption statuses so that they can be a little more competitive with their larger farm like counterparts and stuff like that. But we lobby at the State House. It's hard. I think the best way is if you find a good organization is to sign up for the newsletter, because if they're going, they're gonna let you know.
About 400 email a day.
Yeah.
They're not all political, a lot of them are,
Understood. My inbox is the same. Yeah.
Which is not working.
No, it's not working.
Is it? 400 emails is way too.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
I kind of skim through and I get rid of the garbage and then I hold the stuff that I never get to read. I try to know when there's
We have time for
event.
one more question, so I want to make sure we get at least.
Oh.
I'm speaking in microphone.
Yes,
I
right
don't
here.
think
We
it's
got
gonna
you.
reach that far.
We got
so
you.
it might
Don't
be
worry about it.
shorter.
Oops. This is the
I'll
wrong
take it.
one.
I
This
could
is the
come
one.
up
There
closer.
you go. This is the hot mic.
Since it's election year, it's a great opportunity to get mayor candidates and governor candidates to have to speak about issues that we're all concerned with. So what are one or two questions that would represent everybody that could be put to Elena Bonanno or folks or Governor McKee or David Morales or Mayor Smiley? So just one or two, so like if I had a chance.
Yeah, I would like to know, what are they doing? What work do they foresee for strengthening our healthcare system? Our healthcare providers have the lowest reimbursement rates in the country, I think, or something like that, right? And so we're losing providers left and right. But even if it's not the lowest, we're losing providers left and right. People don't have access to basic care.
I agree.
And what are they doing to strengthen healthcare systems for people of lower economic means, right? Because that's the thing is the providers that we do have are no longer taking those insurances.
There is a bill for a medical school at RIC, I think. RIC, whatever.
And that's gonna churn out doctors in,
Repeat what she just
just
said.
that there's a bill for a medical school at Rhode Island College.
I think it's our URI.
Oh, at URI,
One of
URI,
those.
one of the Rhode Island colleges.
And I think the model behind that is that those who apply to medical school will have their education financed if they commit to being primary care locally for a certain, it's like it's an old model.
7 years.
Yeah.
7 years.
Seven years, and then
Plus the planning and everything for the school.
right.
Yeah.
So it's we're looking at 15 years before we start to see providers from that program, right? If we think about the planning for the school, the building of the school, plus the education process, and getting them out to the workforce.
Not in my lifetime,
Unfortunately.
quite frankly, but.
Yeah, you know, at a city level, I know it's been a hot topic and it's been talked about recently about rent stabilization. You know, every single day we'll see people that come through our doors who have been evicted. I think we are maybe the highest rent in the country right now. So yeah, that sort of question being posed to municipal leaders about what they're doing to kind of try to have some rent stabilization to ensure that people are able to stay in safe places. At a state level, certainly, you know, what's being done to create more affordable housing. There just seems to be zero discussion about it. And you know, again, I have my own personal thoughts on our current governor, but in his tenure, it felt it's not ever come up really in any sort of conversations that we've been a part of with him. And I feel strongly that until somebody else is in that role, we're not going to see that change. But that's such an important topic to be able to find more spaces for our friends who are on low fixed incomes and no income, to be able to have safe spaces to stay in.
And he's moving the budget backwards for environmental justice, environmental everything.
Yeah, he's following the lead of the top.
It's not good.
Yeah.
It's okay, one day we'll all turn into big orange Cheetos.
I would say pay attention to locally, at least in Providence, to what's happening at the port. The port, People's Port Authority is trying to shut down those industries that are polluting that area. It's a lot of asthma, a lot of polluting the air. It's all over. So that's
We have the
one of
third
them.
highest rates of asthma and air polluted related sicknesses in the country in our port adjacent neighborhoods.
0909.
Yeah.
Those are black and brown neighborhoods, right? That were bisectioned off by the industrialization and the building of the highway, right? And now we're surrounded by highway all around those neighborhoods and smog. And then we have our city, whoa, I can't get too deep into this. You know, but we have the Prof Port, which is an entity that is owned by the city, even though they don't run like a city entity, it's a quasi-public entity, who own that land and continually rent it out to bad polluters, right? So that's our city telling us, it's okay that we're making you sick, we're gonna keep making you sick, and by the way, we're gonna do it next to our largest hospital. Make it make sense.
Yeah. So I would say that, People's Port Authority, a grassroots on the ground organization, for years trying to do something with that industry. I'm in Pawtucket, so my local government, we're trying to make sure they don't shut down the only green space, which is Morley Fields Park on the west side of Pawtucket, which is predominantly Cape Verdean community, low income. Which they already made the warehouse, but there's still a park there, but it's shipped off some of it to make that thing. So that's another fight in another city.
Just as a piggyback FYI, this Saturday, believe it or not, it's just coincidence, but this Saturday, the master plan for the port will be presented again. I mean, they have we do master plans and then they say they last for 10 years. And then 2 years later, they're back in amending the master plan. So it's always a moving target, but for those who do have some interest in some of the presentations that they make to the public, you know, you obviously have to take it with a grain of salt, but just as an FYI, there will be a presentation this Saturday at CCRI. I believe it starts at 11, for those who are interested, and it's specifically on the port itself.
I'm sorry, which campus of CCRI?
Hilton Street, the one that's right up the street from this meeting and this master plan presentation was basically the fruits of Washington Park community members, you know, basically going off on the city about why they haven't been informed or kept informed, shall we say.
Yeah.
So that's just a.
And I would like to add, because the Sustainability Commission was a part of that fight, and was successful in earmarking a small amount of funds that amounts to roughly $112,000 a year, or 4% of their profit, to go to funds, to go back into the communities around the port properties, right? But that came from years and years of fighting with Provport and the city of Providence around the pollution on those properties. And those monies still haven't been put out to community. And one chunk of the money is controlled by the Sustainability Commission, that's me and some friends. And then the other chunk is controlled by Parks and Recreation. And Parks and Rec have already spent a chunk of their money without consulting community. So like, if you're really interested in what's happening with community, you gotta get into the city hall and get into those offices, because there's a lot of shady backhand deals happening all the time.
So we promised that we wouldn't hold people captive, but I think that our speakers are all willing to hang out and chat for a little bit afterwards. So, but Joan, you wanted to say a few words.
Well, on behalf of the,
Yes, please.
oh, sure. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, thank you. The League was born in dreadful times. Jim Crow was ascendant, the Ku Klux Klan was being born, the strongest anti-immigration laws were passed, and gosh, it seems a little eerily similar to today. We are on the cusp of even grimmer times, and how wonderful to have this conversation focused on the future. And we can all take heart from wonderful grassroots organizations, people who are working beyond what they thought they could do to help people, and they're collaborating with each other. They're reaching out to government even when government is unresponsive, and they're not losing hope. They are conversing. I urge all of you to get on the mailing list to become a driver for the Mathewson Street Church, to start lobbying for the port, to work with people who have been previously incarcerated, and to join. All three mentioned changing the conversation. I hope this conversation has prodded all of us to converse further with other people we know, because the future beckons and will be better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add my personal thanks to Kathy and working, get us all together, get us together. I appreciate it. Hang out.